So, how did the two of you meet?
Well, I'll start then. I had one husky dog, and I was a member of the husky dog club in the area, and they were holding a dance at the Prince Albert Community Hall in order to raise funds for the races in the wintertime. So people kept asking me if I would go to this thing, and I said, look, I will drive myself and I will come, and then I could leave when I wanted to, because it was most people I knew that were going were couples, and I didn't want to feel out of place about that. So I went, and then Clayton ended up sitting at the same table as I did. And Don knows where they introduced us.
Mm-hmm. Now, my reason for there was completely different. I was a young man known for my ability to drink and consume alcohol, and I was invited to the dance strictly for the purpose of making money for the club, because I would drink. And I went off, and I sat down at this table of married couples with one single girl who was beside me, who I really was very interested in right off, but I was very shy, so it took a couple of beers to get up the courage to speak to her.
Okay. And so trying to be polite, I asked him what he did for a living, and he told me he was a private investigator. And I went, ah, ha, 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 and I hit the table in my boisterous laugh that I have. And because just in that moment at the television, on the television at the time was Mannix, Remington Steele,
Magnum PI.
Magnum PI, all these private investigators who were very
handsome and dashing.
And that's what, when he said private investigator, that's what I thought he was trying to portray himself as.
So he was trying to be like Magnum PI?
Yeah. Well, what he did was he looked so hurt, and then I felt bad that I hurt his feelings. He pulled out his little license that said private investigator and security guard. To prove that he was a private investigator.
I had a dual license in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Because I worked in the public housing.
So that's how the two of you initially met?
At the Prince Albert Community Hall.
So I finally drank enough that he asked me to dance. I thought it was so boring. I thought, oh, isn't anybody even going to ask me to dance in this place? Like, it's so boring sitting here. I didn't even have a drink at the time.
And then we started to dance.
And what day was it?
It was October the 2nd, 1982.
1982.
And so on the dance floor, I'm telling him I'm a born-again Christian.
And I believe
I
in the man
have Jesus
upstairs.
Christ as my Savior, and he said he believed in the man upstairs too. But he didn't bother him, and
I don't bother him, and he doesn't bother me.
That's how you word it. But we danced for over an hour, I think.
Mm-hmm. We had a great deal of fun. And then
He wanted to show me his car.
Yes.
And what song did you have on in the car? Do you remember that part?
Bat Out of Hell.
Was on his tape deck or whatever it was in those days.
Like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone when the morning comes.
But,
But
so the next thing he did not ask me for my address or phone number. He just asked if he could call me. So he was proving that he could be a private investigator. Meanwhile, his friend Don Nosey that asked him to come, I knew Don, and all he had to do was ask Don. But anyway, so he did call me.
Some good investigating, right? You took her to Star Trek?
The following Saturday.
We had Swiss Chalet for lunch
Mm-hmm.
and went to an afternoon movie because at that time I worked 12-hour days. So.
And I was on shift, so I was working the evening shift. So I took her to lunch, and then we went to a movie, and then I took her home, and I had to go back to work.
And the one thing I remember about that day, you were very tall, and I had high heels on that day. And I had to ask him to please slow down and walk with me because I couldn't keep up in the high heels, trying to keep up to his long strides.
So we were together for about 2.5 months. In the meantime, I got saved. November 6, 1982. Became a Christian. She tried to dump me. And I accepted that. It happened before. However, this time I decided that no, I wasn't going to put up with this. And it was that point I decided she must be the one I'm to marry. So I pursued her and won her heart eventually. And on December the 23rd, not too much after we had first met, we got engaged. I placed a gold ring upon her finger with a little diamond in it.
How did you propose? Just
Did you get down on one knee?
I did.
Was the ring a surprise?
She had looked at rings with me. So
She tried to dump you? Or she did dump you?
she tried to dump me.
Well, I had been married before, and I was very concerned if I could love someone. And I knew he loved me because he would very romantically, he would know the next time we were going to meet, and he'd tell me how many days, how many hours, how many minutes till he would see me again. He was counting everything. And so that kind of scared me a little bit. And so I said, I need to go home for the weekend. I want to go to see my family. I just needed a little break. And that's when he thought I was trying to dump him. But I wanted to have a clear head and not rush into something, or I was a little bit afraid to love somebody again. So anyways, I did pray. We got engaged, and I prayed, and I said, Lord, if I am to marry him, I know he loves me. Help me if this is the man. And I just sensed waves of love for him, and I knew it was going to be all right. And
So we purchased our first home on January the 7th, 1983. I moved in it on March 23rd, and on the 21st of May, we got married.
So, from October the 2nd,
To the 21st of May, about 7.5 months,
and you got engaged in 82 days?
82 days. It's been 82 days since the night of my dreams. A candle of light was so it would seem. I wrote her a poem. I was very poetic.
I know.
I'm not so good now. I seem to have lost the ability to write poems in the last few years. My last poem was when
Zach.
Clayton, you're 51.
You have a poem for Zach?
Yeah, I had a poem for Zach too. I miss Zach. We're not going to talk about Zach now, or I'm going to really cry. So we went to a tropical island for our honeymoon.
No, you didn't.
he asked me if you'd like to go to an island for your honeymoon, and I said Newfoundland was the only province I hadn't seen yet. So we flew into St. John's, rented a little car,
And drove across the province and back.
across, over to Corner Brook, up to Twillingate,
Yeah.
back to St. John's.
Climbed Grossmorn, or at least at the bottom of Grossmorn. That was an adventure. Everywhere we went, everyone was very friendly. We would show up at houses and say, we're friends of such and such down in Ontario. And suddenly we're no longer just strangers walking down the street. We're just like family. The friendliest people on earth live in Newfoundland.
Did you just stay at random people's houses?
No, we always had a
Didn't stay with
hotel.
in their house. But the Don Nosey I mentioned that worked with Clayton, invited him, was our best man. And so we had his family's number, and we had his wife's family number. And we stopped at Alfreda's mom and sister's place, knocked on the door and said, hi, we are friends of Alfreda. And they said, come on in, have a cup of tea. And then it was Don's brother who said, come on over, and they practically had a party.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, it was just amazing. The hospitality was just extraordinary. But even when you were anywhere you went, the people were extraordinarily friendly.
So, still in love today?
Very much so. She's precious to me. She's my precious.